Around mid-October of 2025, Six Flags sent out a bunch of these ride surveys to a bunch of their different parks throughout the chain. These ride surveys are really to gauge interest in these different attractions or different ideas or concepts that the chain puts out, and it lets them gauge interest in them. These surveys can include anything from high thrill roller coasters to family coasters to stunt shows, just general shows, flat rides, dark rides, even some water park editions. And it's really just to see what people think about them. If they put out this high thrill launch coaster and nobody votes for it, the park probably doesn't want to invest the money in that compared to where, say, everyone votes overwhelmingly for like a wing coaster or a giga dive. The park knows, well, maybe we should go at least in that general direction, maybe not exactly what's on the survey. There were around 15 or 16 different parks that got these surveys, and the parks that did not get these surveys I'll touch on in part 2 of this video, but I want to quickly go through all of these different parks and all these different surveys and kind of go over each option and what I think is the best, what I think doesn't really make sense. And like I just said, this is going to be a 2-part video because there were 15 or 16 different parks that got these with 4 to 5 options per park. So this is going to take a little bit of time to get through. Starting off our list is Dorney Park. They just got Iron Menace a couple years ago. Really surprising addition. It was a nice fit for the park despite some of the criticism for it being rough, and they actually got a ride survey. The first option that I think makes the least sense was they had an antique autos option. And I like the concept, but it would be redundant for road rally. It's like this car ride that they already have that's over by the Zephyr. It's a pretty good ride. I enjoyed it. So I don't think it really needs a replacement right now. Now, this antique auto ride might not be a replacement. It might be something separate. But if it is, then it feels kind of redundant. Next up, they had a family raft ride. Also a good concept, but based on the rendering in the actual ride survey, it looks like this would go into the dry park. The dry park already has 3 water rides in it. They have like a rapids ride, a longer log flume, and then I believe it's called Whitewater Landing. It's kind of like Congo Falls at Kings Island. It goes up a lift hill and drops down. That's it. So this would be kind of redundant. You don't really need a 4th water ride in the dry park. So if this went over here, I would imagine it would be a replacement for Whitewater Landing. Next up, we have what they list as a spinning coaster. And the general public probably doesn't see a difference between this and an actual roller coaster. This is not a roller coaster. There's a lot of these little spinning rides that kind of go up a hill and then have 2 little mini spikes and they go back and forth, but they're pretty much powered the whole way. Not really sure that this is what Dorney needs. I feel like there's 2 options that would work a lot better on the survey. Next up, we have a story-driven coaster, and we're seeing a couple of these pop up around the chain already. There's Snoopy's Racing Railway at Carowinds and Canada's Wonderland, and that's what's listed on the survey. I imagine that's kind of what Dorney Park would go for. It was just a clone. Not a bad pick. I like these clones a lot. It sucks that they're only 1 train, but for a park like Dorney Park, they could work with that. Actually, I think a ride like this makes more sense for Dorney than it did at Carowinds or Canada's Wonderland. And I imagine, this is a pretty compact roller coaster, so I think they could fit it in pretty easily. And I think it would work well for Dorney Park. Personally, if it were me, I would go with a Gravity Group family wooden coaster like Kentucky Flyer or Bobcat. I feel like that's a little more unique and that would do better for Dorney, but this isn't a bad option either. And finally, the option that I like the most, which is not a roller coaster, is the Star Flyer. I absolutely love these things. And it's interesting because there's a certain Six Flags park not too far away that's closing that also has a Star Flyer. So I kind of wonder if this is going to be a potential for a relocation from Six Flags America, their Star Flyer, to Dorney Park. And honestly, I would be fine with that. I don't think it needs to be a brand new ride. I think the Star Flyer would look fantastic in Dorney Park Skyline as well. These are just all around fun rides, and since Dorney Park doesn't really have anything like it, I think it would be a fantastic fit. Next up, we have King's Dominion over in Virginia. Great park. I love King's Dominion. They just got RapTerra in 2025. Little bouncy, but still a really good ride overall, and it was a really good fit for the park. They had 5 options as well in their survey. The first one I'm going to cover is an Action River experience. And you can't really tell from the rendering, it looks like it would be some type of like tube ride, almost like a lazy river, but almost like an intense lazy river is how they describe it. That looks like it would be a water park edition as well, which is fine. I definitely think their Soak City could use some additional rides from what I've seen. Never visited. Not my cup of tea, and that's why I'm putting it at the bottom here. Similar situation here for the adult pool slash lagoon area. I'm not really sure what this would entail from the looks of it. It would be something similar to like maybe a walk-up bar or just a place to chill out for adults only, which it would definitely have a good appeal. It's just not my cup of tea, which is why I listed it a little bit lower. Next up, we have a family thrill launch coaster, and I think these are going to be a trend that you not only see on these ride surveys, but a trend that you see pop up in the park. They use a rendering of something that looks similar to Big Bear Mountain. I'm not sure. I'm assuming this is a coaster somewhere else. I'm not super familiar with it, so let me know in the comments what coaster is on this rendering. I think something like this could benefit almost any park in the chain. I'd also like to put out that something like Snoopy's Racing Railway or a Vekoma Family Boomerang would also work really well in Planet Snoopy. And I'm surprised one of those was not on the survey. But this would be a great ride. These are Big Bear Mountain is fantastic. Anything remotely similar would be absolutely fantastic. And this was also the only roller coaster option on the survey, but just like Dorney Park, I don't think this is actually the best fit for the next ride. Moving on, we have a multi-lane mat racer. I've done the one at Kings Island. I've done a couple of them actually before, not just at Kings Island, just in general. And the sense of speed you get based on how you lay, like on the mats, is an awesome sensation. And I love these things. And I think any park that wants to install one, I think it would be a great fit. And finally, my personal pick for what I would go with is an interactive dark ride. Interestingly, they actually list it as a story-driven dark ride, and they show the photo or the rendering of Phantom Theater, like the revamp at Kings Island. And I don't think King's Dominion would go with that. I think that's going to be a Kings Island exclusive theme. That's just an example. But something like redoing Boo Blasters at King's Dominion, great choice in my opinion. Boo Blasters is well overdue. It was well overdue at Kings Island. It's overdue at King's Dominion. It's overdue at Carowinds. It's time. Retheme them. You can keep the ride system, whatever you got to do. Redo it to something else, please. So that's my personal pick for King's Dominion. For the next park, we have Carowinds, where the Carolinas come together. They had 6 options on their survey, actually. 4 of them were roller coasters. And to be honest, not really a fan of any of the roller coaster options. Now, the survey shows a rendering of Alpenfury at Canada's Wonderland. And obviously, I don't think it would be a clone of this. It might be similar. Don't get me wrong, love Alpenfury. It's in my top 15 out of over 550 roller coasters. I mean, it's that good. It just doesn't make sense for Carowinds. A powerful launch coaster would be a nice complement to Copperhead Strike. It's just not an obvious gap that they need, or that they need to have filled. They also listed a Giga Discovery, and I love this option, and I do think it would be a good fit over where a drop tower used to be. However, I personally think they need a new roller coaster first. My third pick is a family thrill launch coaster. Again, something like Big Bear Mountain. It looks like it would come from Vekoma, be similar. Like I said, you're going to see a lot of these start popping up on surveys, and I think a lot of parks are going to start looking into these types of roller coasters, and there's nothing wrong with that. As much as I like this fit, they really need a major coaster first. This brings me to my next option that I have, and that is the dive coaster they listed. I am not the biggest fan of dive coasters, but I would agree this is a solid fit to Carowinds lineup. My question, though, is whether this is still going to be a Giga Dive coaster or if it's going to be like a mini dive coaster, because the photo they show is Iron Menace, which is a mini dive. Last year, when Carowinds sent out a survey, they had listed a Giga Dive. I don't think it necessarily has to be a Giga Dive. Do a tilt coaster instead. Right there in the old Nighthawk plot of land, a tilt coaster, it would catch everybody's attention. I think it would be much more marketable in that spot than a dive coaster. For the fifth option, and what I personally think would be the best fit in terms of a roller coaster for Carowinds, at least from what they listed, is the wing coaster. Now I can already hear people groaning at this. As an enthusiast, I understand a lot of people don't like wing coasters. They're not a fan of them. They think they're boring. Me personally, absolutely love wing coasters. And I think one would do really good at Carowinds. I am curious on what variation they would go with. Would it be something larger with like a lift hill, like Gatekeeper, or something more compact, like X-Flight with a lift hill, or do they go the RapTerra route and do a launched wing? Personally, I think they go for a launched wing. It's just launch coasters seem to be more marketable and they seem to be the trend right now. I don't think any of the coasters that they included are a great fit for Carowinds right now. It's just, I think a tilt coaster or a modern GCI or Gravity Group wooden coaster would do much, much better for the park. And finally, my personal favorite option is the S&S Screamin' Swing. I absolutely love these things. This would be a perfect fit for Carowinds. It would be popular. I don't know where they would put it. Maybe over close to where the old drop tower was. I think it would fit over there. Don't know if you'd have to remove anything else. I haven't really looked up the map and measured up to this point. But you could do a lot of good things with this. You could theme it well. It could be a record-breaking scream and swing. You could beat Hershey Park's record that they currently hold. It would just be a fantastic ride all around. Everybody loves these things. They always have a long line. Can't go wrong with it. Moving on, we've got the crown jewel of the old Cedar Fair chain, and honestly, probably the Six Flags chain too, now that they're merged, Cedar Point. And their survey was interesting, especially for their coaster picks. The first one that I'm going to put at the very bottom, at least in my opinion, is the Suspended Thrill Glider. I don't envision this as a Cedar Point roller coaster. And I know Magic Mountain is getting one, and part of me was wondering, well, is this Magic Mountain's maybe that they shifted? But no, the shipments have now shipped to Magic Mountain for theirs. But it's interesting. Now, I assume this would be a record-breaking suspended thrill glider. It wouldn't be that hard to break records since there'd only be one other one at Magic Mountain. I just think there's better options from Vekoma. I mean, look at a Vekoma flyer like FLY. Or if they wanted to go with something other than Vekoma, Mach Extreme Spinner. I just don't think the Thrill Glider makes a lot of sense. Next up, we have the family-friendly coaster. And this is something that looks like Snoopy's Racing Railway. They actually do really need a third little small family coaster. I don't know if this is what they really need next. I think they need something bigger like Big Bear Mountain, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. If they're going to go with this, they have to revamp their kids' areas along with it. Coming in at the middle of the pack on the survey, we have a stunt show. And Cedar Point already has a ton of good shows, and this would really benefit that lineup. It would give you a thrilling alternative to rides, just because Cedar Point is the roller coaster capital of the world, and a lot of people consider it like the thrill capital of the world. I don't think that has to be limited to rides. This would be a great way, you're tired. Cedar Point is a big park. You get tired, you go, and you can still keep your thrills going with this stunt show. Coming up next, we have a multi-launch family coaster. Again, just like these trends we're seeing, something that's rendered similar to Big Bear Mountain from Vekoma. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing this instead of another thrill coaster. They're due for a larger scale family coaster. I mean, if you look up their family coaster lineup, you have Iron Dragon, that's old. Cedar Creek Mine Ride, that's old. Gemini, you can kind of consider it as like a family thrill coaster. They really need something a little more modern, and this would do wonders for them. And finally, we have a nighttime spectacular, which is by far my number one pick off of this survey. And I have always said it's weird that Cedar Point doesn't do some type of nightly big show to close the park. I look at Kings Island, and I know Kings Island, that's a tradition. The fireworks in the summer. They've been doing it since the park opened in 1972. But you have all that room. You've got, well, not room, but the peninsula is huge. You could do a really cool show over the lake. Whatever they ended up doing, whether that ends up being drones, fireworks, I think this would be an absolutely fantastic addition and a great way to end your night. The only caveat I have is I'm thinking maybe the wind or the unpredictable weather would make this kind of hard to pull off as a nighttime, every night thing during the summer, but I don't really know what they have in store for a nighttime spectacular. So maybe it would work out. I don't know. Only time will tell. Coming up next, we have Six Flags Great Adventure, a park that has it has not had a good couple of years. They lost King Caw, Green Lantern, that's not a big loss. A lot of flat rides and a ton of flat rides. And the survey options are interesting because we know that you have a big mock extreme spinner coming. But what's beyond that, we don't know, and they didn't list a single coaster on their survey. Now, they did list some options that fill in gaps that the park desperately needs filled. The lowest one I have is a Planet Snoopy family area, which is interesting because I wonder if this would be a retheme of their current Looney Tunes area or a brand new area. And it would also be interesting that they're bringing Peanuts to Six Flags parks. Well, just a few months ago, we didn't know if they were even going to extend the contract. I like Snoopy. I prefer Peanuts over Looney Tunes by quite a bit. Just not really what the park needs right now. This was probably the area that was affected the least. Next up, I have the 300 to 400 foot drop tower. And I'm really glad to see the park has not forgotten that they knocked down Zumanjaro with King Caw. It was one of the only 400 foot or 400 plus foot drop towers out there, and naturally this would be a good fit for the park. I personally don't like drop towers. The tallest one I've ridden is 180 feet. I'm trying to work my way up there to the 200 footers, maybe next year. But I know a lot of people liked having that tall drop tower there. I'm glad they're looking at replacing it. And finally, the option, in my opinion, Great Adventure needs by far the most is the collection of rides. And this is a lot of various flat rides that are rendered here. You have a lot of options. It doesn't have to be limited to these. But they really need 4, 5, maybe 6 good flat rides to come in and replace what they removed. Please, flat rides. Great Adventure needs flat rides right now. Great Adventure needs a lot of things right now, but flat rides is definitely near the top of something they need. So coming up to one of the final parks in this video at least is Six Flags Magic Mountain. And we already know in 2025 they were supposed to get a new coaster, which is the Vekoma Suspended Thrill Glider. That got delayed till 2026, and now maybe it's delayed till 2027. They haven't really said anything. I mean, the shipments are supposedly on their way to the park, so we'll see. But they listed 4 options, and one of them kind of stands out as a weird choice, and that's this first one, which is a launch coaster. They actually feature a Vekoma launch coaster on the rendering, which doesn't mean this is what it would look like. In fact, it probably wouldn't, given the terrain of Magic Mountain. But this is very weird. And I think the park is just trying to see what people think about a third launch coaster, given that Superman is gone. I mean, I like launch coasters as much as the next guy, but they don't need another launch coaster right now. They're good. Coming up next, we have a collection of rides. And this is another, what looks like it would be a flat ride package. And I feel like Magic Mountain, in some places, it feels kind of barren or empty. And I think they really do need these high capacity flat rides if they want to accommodate an increase of attendance that they want for Magic Mountain. Coasters are great, but more flat rides really help to absorb people and draw people in. Not everybody is a coaster person. Some people like to go and ride the teacups or ride, a small flat ride. And it gives them something to do. And I feel like Magic Mountain right now doesn't really have a ton of options. Next up, we have a story driven dark ride. And I only put this one over the collection of rides if they get a second story driven dark ride. They already have their DC one. And normally I would say, okay, maybe retheme that one. The issue is Magic Mountain, where it's located, it gets hot. Like, very hot. We went there for 2 days, and one of the days it was over 100 degrees, and the heat index was like 112. And, I don't, the DC dark rides that they have, the Justice League ones, they're pretty good, but I have never felt so relieved walking into a building. And finally, for my number one option on their survey, this is a ride that's not even in the dry park, and that is a dueling water coaster. We don't know really what scale this would be. I don't know if it would be similar to the one at Kings Island, where it's like a little family dueling water coaster. Even then, it would be a good fit. Anything to add to the water park, because once again, Magic Mountain, it feels like you're getting incinerated sometimes. I mean, legitimately, when it's hot outside. And I know the water park, even when the dry park wasn't super busy when we were there, the water park slammed. For the final park on this list, we have Six Flags Over Georgia, and this one is kind of interesting. It's kind of weird to me. So the first one that I put the lowest on my list anyway is a rethemed kids area. And the kids area they have now, it doesn't really feel out of date. It feels kind of empty in some spots. I really think they could use a second family slash kiddie coaster. But again, this is just a retheme of the area. It doesn't say new rides or new kiddie coaster. The second one I have listed here is a mine train coaster. And this is the one that interests me kind of the most on this survey because they list it as a mine train coaster. But the actual description says an exciting wood and steel hybrid coaster will blend the charm of a classic wooden coaster with the smooth, high-speed thrills of modern steel engineering. And if you look at the rendering, those look like GCI trains. Actually, the entire layout looks like a GCI, which is interesting. Not a bad fit for Over Georgia. I didn't have any sort of wooden coaster, even if it's a wooden steel hybrid family coaster. I didn't have this on my radar at all. I think this would be geared to be a Dahlonega mine train replacement. So, my personal opinion, Dahlonega mine train is not that great of a mine train. It's not the worst. I like this fit. I don't think it's what they need next. I think Dahlonega mine train is fine. It can go for another 5-6 years if they need it to. For the third option, we have a water park expansion. And I'm not really going to touch on this much because I've never been to the water park at Over Georgia. I just know that Atlanta summers get absolutely hot and humid. So a water park expansion for Atlanta, never a bad idea. And coming into my number one pick on the survey, which I think is by far, what the park needs, is a launch coaster. Now they have Alpenfury again listed on the rendering here. Doesn't have to be Alpenfury. Doesn't have to be the scale of Alpenfury. Doesn't even have to be Premier. A Vekoma launch would do just fine. Something like Abysses over to Energylandia. That would do great. They need a full circuit, full scale launch coaster. And I think that's what they need the most. Now what's interesting is the Mine Train coaster is one of the only coasters on all of these surveys between all the parks that have like a custom layout or like a custom rendering. The rest of them show Snoopy's Racing Railway or Alpenfury or the same, Vekoma Family Thrill Launch Coaster. This one was the Mine Train coaster. That one was custom rendered, which makes me wonder if that's already in the works. It's interesting for Over Georgia too, because before it seemed like a lot of emphasis was put on the dive coaster that they had on their first survey, like I think it was about a year ago. And they had a photo of Valraven at Cedar Point, so they kind of hinted at a hyper dive coaster, which for over Georgia, that would be really marketable. More so than a mine train coaster, more so than a launch coaster, honestly. I'm surprised they didn't list the dive coaster again, unless that's already purchased and in the works. That wraps up my thoughts for these first 7 or so parks and their surveys. Keep an eye out for part 2 because we'll be going through the rest of them. Have a good one.